Man, what's going on, guys? It's been a really good day of good news. Kick things off. I'm going to be a deeper part of the Bleacher Report community as a captain now, especially for the Jets related content. So look forward to me dropping some things over there. Really excited about that. Also got good news on the new job that's being locked in. So should be starting that at the beginning of the month. So a lot of busy things. Looking forward to dropping more content. Today, I just kind of want to cover the bases with, I guess, level setting expectations and things that we would have thought about with the New York Jets. So, for starters, I know personally my own experience. I was leaning heavily based on the history of the teams, right? Joe Douglas being with the Ravens, being with the Eagles, kind of what their drafts have looked like, where they've selected individuals, free agency moves. And then the same thing with Robert Saleh, right? Coming over from the Jacksonville Jaguars, being with the 49ers. And then, the philosophies that they both advise us about defensive line, offensive line centric. And then everything else, of course, we'll try to input the best players possible. So I think the big thing for me was I was so focused on that it didn't really leave any leeway for what can happen on an individual basis. Every draft's going to be different in terms of who the main impact players are going to be. Um, some of the top heavy, maybe potential Hall of Fame right out the gate style players. Robert Sala's mentioned in a recent interview, when it comes to unicorns, and the questions was centered around Kyle Hamilton being drafted. But when it comes to those unicorn type players, especially at positions that might not be the most impactful on a down to down basis, safety would be something like that. Offensive line to a certain degree. Just in general, players that are going to have an enormous impact, right? Obviously, you'll find star candidates, Hall of Fame players, your Ed Reeds, etc. At multiple positions, and he pretty much advises as much when it comes to those unicorn players coming up. Given whatever the situation looks like, they aren't opposed to taking those players, right? And he kind of referenced Derwin James and at the safety position being a monster. And he also referenced Tremaine Edmonds at the linebacker position from the Buffalo Bills. So it's a potential, right? If Kyle Hamilton truly ends up being the best player at number 4 that we can potentially grab right away, we're going to pick him up, it sounds like. I don't see it happening because, per the combine, Evan Neal and Ika Mekwanu, they've looked crazy. The physique that they came in with looks stellar. They're answering questions great at the combine. And they definitely seem like they have the frame of mind and the mentality to dominate on the offensive line. We also still have, the defensive line prospects. Kayvon Thibodeau could potentially, still fall to number 4 and we grab him. George Karlaftis could still perform and, show up crazy throughout the combine and pro day process. And maybe we, feel comfortable selecting him. There's still trade down scenarios that could be presented to us if somebody does want to move up. Number 4, I think we'll end up staying. But if we were going to move, it's probably because somebody wants whichever tackle doesn't make it, right? And then we still have like a Charles Cross that's down there depending on how far we drop. So it's a lot of interesting scenarios. I was pretty dead set that we weren't going to grab anybody in the secondary early on. And while I don't think Kyle Hamilton will be the player, there has been some recent information that may dictate what moves we make, right? The two things would be on the offensive side, we want a number 1 caliber wide receiver. Elijah Moore has the potential and ability to be that player for us. But we need to see it consistent over the course of a full season. Corey Davis is looked at right now as a very, very good number 2. And due to, injury as well as kind of what he's produced on the field for us so far, I would say that probably matches up, right? When you have a de facto, no arguments made number 1 type wide receiver, and we just don't quite have that yet. At least it hasn't been shown consistently. So we need to grab a number 1. On the defensive side, cornerback, Bryce Hall specifically, he's kind of been looked down upon a bit. And I think it's just maybe the way people are taking some of the media comments. Essentially, the way the team is looking at it, if everything rings true, is that Bryce Hall is a very, very good player, right? Worst case scenario, high end number two based on what he's shown us so far. What's taken him from being a number one, which I've talked about before, is the playmaking, the ball hawking skills, right? One or two interceptions in his career so far. I couldn't remember what exactly the numbers were. And then some of the comments that came from like a source, source, somebody that's kind of connected and tied to the team was that people have come up to the coaching staff saying that they've targeted number 37 because they know worst case scenario, they're just going to come up with an incompletion. They don't really have to worry about him grabbing the ball and taking it down the field or still, at least flipping the field for him and getting the ball back in the hands of the offense. So if that rings true, we're looking for a number one cornerback. And there's a few different interesting trade options that could come up, but more specifically, there's at least two players in the draft that everybody can essentially agree on that looks like would be great additions, and that would be Derek Stingley Jr., who I was big on for the longest up until this upcoming season. Not to be a fan flipper or anything, but now, taking a look at Ahmad Sauce Gardner, there's nothing you can't love about the kid. He has the size, he has enough speed to be able to keep up and do the things he needs to do. Man coverage is crazy. Everybody loves the ridiculous stat that he's never allowed a touchdown over the course of his 3 seasons he's played. And we're not just talking like he's played 50 snaps and then, maybe suddenly he got like 400 or so this season. We're talking about a significant amount of coverage snaps, and he's playing the number one every time. So it would be a little bit reminiscent, I think, for a lot of people of, thinking about Darrelle Revis. But needless to say, I've kind of solidified with this being my last week of having, somewhat of free time before I jump back into work things. I'm going to drop my mock draft at least by the end of the week and expect some changes there. Since I do think it could be an actual realistic possibility that we grab a playmaker in the secondary, Kyle Hamilton probably won't be the choice. We'll see what happens with whatever news and stuff I come up with by then that I end up finding out. But it's a very good potential that a cornerback can end up being the play, especially since in this actual mock draft, the first one I didn't conduct trades. This one will actually take a look at them as well to see what kind of makes sense there. But we've also been linked to numerous trade partners. Philadelphia Eagles was the wildest one that we just recently spoke about. We also had the one with the Steelers. That one had all the fans going crazy. Checking out all the comments on what you guys broke down made a lot of sense, but you never know. I mentioned it a few times. When it comes to quarterbacks, teams get beer goggles, and anything can happen there. So I think overall, realistically, what I want everybody to be aware of is that in our rebuild phase, right? If we want to talk about it being in 3 phases, part 1 is done. Part 1 was basically stripping down the roster, as many teams in the NFL are going to do, inserting your own players and seeing who sticks, right? And so the 2020 draft, realistically being that first actual rebuilding draft class, we're taking a look at, we hit on almost every pick you can possibly hit on. Zach Wilson, while, you can't say he's a surefire Hall of Fame quarterback right now, excuse me, obviously, we've seen the tangible improvements right now. He's not a world beater. He's not throwing 400 yards every game. He might not even be throwing 3-4 touchdowns every game, but we've seen the improvement. The best thing everybody can be excited for is the fact that we didn't have turnovers for 5 games, where we're used to seeing multiple interception games rather than even having multiple touchdown games. So, I'm a fan. I think the second season, when we see him really continue to break down the mental piece and then line up some more of those technical components with, getting his hips and feet aligned more correctly. And then just, a lot of what the struggles were too was him missing a lot of the easy throws. So there's a lot going on in his rookie season. I think we see him really calm down. And this second season is where we see things take off, especially with the pieces that we'll put in around him, both directly and indirectly. So, we have him, AVT, we traded up. He looks like he could be Pro Bowl, all pro caliber type talent that we keep at the guard position. We still get Michael Carter, right? Elijah Moore comes in. Again, he could potentially still be a number 1 wide receiver in his own right. Michael Carter leads the way in the committee approach, but he could still potentially be a feature back as well. Just depending on a game by game basis, what the snap counts are going to dictate there. And then we hit on Michael Carter the second. He immediately looks like a starting slot cornerback for us. We do have Jamien Sherwood and Hamza Najmuddin, which we knew they were going to be the more projected type players, developmental wise, with being able to come in and produce an immediate impact. But we get some special teams production out of them. Jamien Sherwood ends up, even before injury, getting the nod to be the defensive signal caller, which is nothing to really shake your head at. That's quite an accomplishment, especially on a team where we've seen the caliber of players Robert Saleh's used to, the talent that JD's came from at the middle linebacker position. And for the rookie to get the nod over players that we've had on the roster already, Noah Dawkins, Quincy Williams, all these other players that are there, it speaks volumes to where he was mentally. So, we get all these players in. We get a lot of production out of them right away. And now for, phase 2 of the rebuild, basically the way I've always seen it is that you want to take a look at trying to cover the glaring weaknesses, which is for us going to be the right guard position. It's going to be safety and then tight end. Those will be like my 3 main things that, by default, we definitely need the improvement there. You take a look at trying to get those up to an, acceptable level. And then we're looking to strengthen areas that we already are, very solid in. The receiver room, I think, on paper, everything looked really good. It didn't turn out that way on the field. But the running back room, you can say we can definitely continue to add and make a string. The receiving room, we still have Corey Davis, Elijah Moore, Braxton Berrios. That's a solid trio. Maybe we get some improvements somewhere, or we just double down on very solid depth. And then the defensive line, of course, that's going to be the main thing. Defensive, offensive line. And then I think we'll have a strong enough cornerback group. So again, kind of you guys are starting to kind of get the big picture, right? Number 1 wide receiver, number 1 cornerback might kind of tip the scales for us. And then we bump up everywhere else that we possibly can, with, of course, the offensive and defensive line being the emphasis. And then phase 3, we're hoping, we're only a few pieces away from, being in the playoffs perennially, hitting the Super Bowl. And that's where we can start taking a look at, which even recently, JD has mentioned, isn't out of the realm of possibility, right? Using some of those premium resources and acquiring the players we think that we need to get in order to start pushing us over the edge and, letting the team that's on paper reflect what we're seeing on the field with the production. So all in all, just kind of some food for thought where I think, the team's coming from. Essentially at this point, to recap everything, things are up in the, anything's for play, right? Trades are open. Free agency is going to be open, of course. We got a lot of cap room, just under 50 mil right now without any moves being made in order to make some things happen. We also are going to have a, crazy draft, 4 picks in the top 40. All of our, I want to say it was 9 picks, if I'm remembering correctly, all 9 picks before, the 6th round even starts. So a lot of awesomeness to look for there. Again, keep in mind, guys, I'm going to be producing and helping out with some content on Bleacher Report. Super excited for that. Looking forward to seeing you guys there, hopefully getting some comments and some stuff going. And then, we're going to keep the ball going. So I appreciate the support from all you guys. A lot of you have been dropping some really cool tips, some info that maybe I haven't seen anywhere. And some of you guys even kind of like quote where the sources and stuff you've seen it from. So, I appreciate all the feedback. At the end of the day, really, I just love being able to communicate with you guys. So appreciate it, and catch you again. Peace.